Hey guys, long time no talk. Blueoriontiger here. Hope everyone's been doing alright. Sorry for no face today, I've not had the actual mood or energy to make more involved videos for over a year now. That would actually explain my upload schedule. It's something I'm working on and I hope to return to one day. I've been wanting to make a video like this for a while now. Me telling you spooky stories. Admittedly, this may have been inspired by some of the recently storytelling channels I've seen pop up in the past year or so. However, I wanted to tell it in a different manner. I got a few caveats I had in other videos that kinda let me down, were unlistenable, and even being too clickbaity. Oh, here's a pretty good example. Video says, tell me paranormal stories. Submitter. I saw a shadow and it scared me, but that was just a cat. Yeah, that's not paranormal. Sorry, buddy. The others, it's just unlistenable. Especially, I usually listen to these things sometimes when I drive, when I work. They try to make it disturbing. Now, artfully, it kind of makes sense, but sometimes, it doesn't quite fit. I mean, I get it if you want to spook someone. I'm all for that. But when you play edgy music, sound like some devil creature, or you just have a lot of disturbing imagery that's more cringe than spook, it turns me off, honestly. And that may have to do with the way I grew up, my background, or whatever. I myself really dislike the simplicity of those 4chan text-to-speak videos with none of that nonsense in there. So it's easy to listen to when doing any of my day routine stuff. No abrupt sound effects, no screaming, etc, etc, etc. So that brings me to this experimental video. I wanted to create a comfortable ambience when telling these stories, which kind of maybe goes against the grain of a typical horror story, but my going vision with this video is that if you were on a car trip and had people talking about scary stuff when they heard while driving, like, find yourself in the middle of Pennsylvania at 10 o'clock at night, and your buddies start swapping stories in the middle of nowhere, but you're clocking it at warp 7 down the interstate, and you're kind of safe, and it's comfortable to know that you can listen to at least. It's more of a basic storytelling in a realistic environment that you can remain a bit calm while listening to. The final product is some unnerving stories that you can listen to comfortably, hand-picked and filtered out, so you don't have nonsense stories to deal with. That's the end result I'm aiming for. So this is going to be a two-parter video. This first one is a collection of Reddit comments I saw in a couple Ask Reddit threads, with the sources below, which is another thing I have against. I don't really like visiting Reddit for my stories, but when I see people that do it, they often just have very bad manners. They don't read the source. They just pick it's a real kind of idiotic mess. So I'm trying a different take on that. A Discord pal of mine by the name of Wayc, we've known each other for about 15 years now, but he's a long lost connection I used to know. He's actually contributing some of his readings to this video, and it's going to help read some of this stuff that I found. So he doesn't have an online presence, but go ahead and drop comments if you do like how he does stuff. Part 2 is going to be an in real life collection of things I've heard about in my lifetime. This is all me, stuff I've heard about, stuff I've seen, mostly from secondhand. I've admittedly never really experienced anything firsthand, and I'm kind of happy for that. But there's stuff I heard that would make some very interesting stories, and I actually do have a doozy of a one that you might be interested, which I think you'd be having a treat with. So that will be in part 2. It will be open format, half ramble, but it'll still keep the same atmospheric ambience that I'm aiming for. So, if you're ready for this, as we're going out on the road, make sure you have your bean burrito, your large drink. You don't need to go to a rest area. Fasten your seatbelt, and let's get on the road and listen to some different stories now, shall we? Creepiest thing was on a jeep trail up on one of the Mount Charleston trails. It was winter and a bunch of snow was up there. We came to this section of trail where all of the trees and bushes were exploded. Not logged, not cut down, simply exploded. The stumps were all about 2-4 feet high and jagged, and tree bits scattered all over the place. It looked like a war zone and was maybe 50 yards long and 20 feet wide. Never figured out what caused it or why. I thought I had photos for proof, but I guess I didn't snap any shots because of the sheer awe of the moment. There's an abandoned house on my street, several actually. It is shrouded in mystery and even longtime neighbors are clueless. The house is as it was 9 years ago when the woman left for shopping. This is evident by the car that sits in the driveway with the sacks from Walmart. Her coat and the blanket are still in the seat of the car. Her gloves are on the console and the key is still in the ignition. That is it. Poof. Gone. I've called the property tax department to find clues and they are just as clueless as anyone. I have been inside, and while I did say that it was as it was the day she left, it has actually become a wildlife house. But the fridge is still full, dishes in the dishwasher, and clothes in the washer. Someone pays the property taxes every year, but 6 months late. Oh my gosh, I grew up in a little river town on the Mississippi. The whole town is a hotbed for paranormal stuff, and I was always a little afraid of the woods. But that never kept me out. Some friends of mine and I were having a fire on top of one of the bluffs that overlooks the town, and a 150-year-old cemetery below in the valley. You could still find tombstones along the hiking trails, super creepy. This is where we always go because the woods break open into a huge rock mass, and you can see everything from up there. Anyways, we all headed into the woods to collect sticks and logs for the fire using our cell phone lamps for light. I started digging in some bushes and my light shone on something crazy. About 3 feet off the ground and about 2 feet in front of me, I saw what looked like a floating leathery egg. Floating and not moving. I was frozen. It then turned or spun around and it was a head. Not dead, but alive. It had black eyes and very wrinkled leathery skin with no hair. We made eye contact for 2 count, then it just zoomed off. I think of it like Star Trek way. They hit warp speed. I just sat there for a few seconds and then worked my way back to the fire pit and just stayed silent for the rest of the night. That was 10 years ago and I have yet to go back in those woods. I drew it the next day. It's grainy. I've tried looking for accounts of similar stuff and I can't find anything. The town was also built on native land and a city bulldozed burial mounds all over the place.
Cowlitz River, Washington State. Camping with my dad and sister, me buddies, early 90s. Something was throwing rocks and sticks into our camp. We shined a flashlight out and caught a reflection of eyes and a silhouette, very, very tall. Kept throwing stuff in our camp randomly for about 15 minutes. We just stoked the fire really high. In the morning, I woke up to heavy footsteps in our camp, and something reeked. Woke up my dad. He shook the tent and yelled. Whatever it was ran off. Human retinas don't reflect light back at night. That's a fun little fact I like sharing around the campfire.
I found a camping spot on a creek off a road down a jeep trail in a very remote part of Idaho. There was an old fire ring there and no one for miles. Poked around the site after setting up. Found an old walker, mesh lawn chair, and about 12 left-footed ladies' shoes. No matching pairs, just the left shoe.
It was dark, and I was sitting around the bonfire with 4 friends in rural North Carolina. We had been drinking, and they had smoked a bit. I wasn't at the time, and were taking turns telling stories. A lull came in the conversation, and the black silhouette of a 6th person stood up and faded into the surrounding darkness. We decided that we'd had enough for the night, and packed everything up before walking back to a friend's house. All 5 of us swear there was a 6th person there, but don't remember any kind of discernible characteristics besides they seemed to be covered in shadow.
Both me and my father ride dirt bikes and we love to explore different things. We took a trip up to West Virginia to ride in the mountains. We don't usually follow a map, but we always have a GPS and satellite phone if we are lost. Exploring one day, we started down a long trail that seemed almost endless down a hill where it kept cutting back. 30 minutes into driving down a hill, it seemed to repeat, so we decided to get off and follow a river upstream. As we followed the river, there was a clearing, just a field surrounding the river, so we stopped and noticed to one side there was a large building. This building was 3 stories, was made of yellowish faded brick with brown red bricks making 2 stripes. Most all of the bottom windows were broken, which seemed normal for some random abandoned building in West Virginia. We got off our bikes and walked up to the building from the front, looking in through the glass doors. We saw it was most all empty but hard trash and whatnot on the inside. On the right side of the main entrance, there was a sort of root cellar that had windows half below dirt level. We walked through the main doors and saw pictures everywhere on the ground. Picking them up, we noticed they were all black and white Polaroid pictures, the first few being of the building. But in the pictures were cars and streets and peoples along with no trees. Remember, this building was in the middle of nowhere in a random field with no pavement or anything around it. In the middle of this main room, a lobby I guess, was a single chair which had one of its legs broken off, so the front of it was balanced on a tree. Picking up more pictures, it got creepy where they were of people without faces or limbs. We started to think it was some kind of hospital. In each of these pictures of victims or patients, there was the same man in the background, but it was hard to make out to find features. As I was picking through the pictures in the lobby, my dad was in the root cellar, which he told me later had a large wooden chair with straps on either arms and one for legs. While looking around, a large crash and the sound of shattered glass came from behind me, and the tree like a chair had crashed through the front doors, which scared the heck out of both me and my dad. So we both ran running to our dirt bikes and frantically left. About 3 months later, we went up again, but this time with 2 of my dad's friends, and so we wanted to show them this place. We took the same trail, the same GPS coordinates of our last stop before we found the hospital 3 months before. We wound up in the same clearing. There was nothing to be seen whatsoever. No building, no footprint, no pavement, nothing. Besides a tree like a chair sitting in the middle of the field on the river. We left, never to talk about it again because we thought we were insane. Not really me, but kinda. We moved into this house in a town over from where we used to. It was a really old house, probably 100 years old or more. And the town is not very big, so it's not like we had neighbors very close, although that last bit doesn't have much to do with the story. I was about 12 at the time. Well, first thing that happened was we started feeling very uneasy in the house. Not crazy moving into a new house. And then I was so terrified of our basement, where the laundry was, I would constantly run as fast as I could up the steps. I was a kid, so again, not so crazy. But what really got weird was when my mom saw a shadow on the other side of the shower door. She opened it and said that when she opened it, the shadow left out of the door very quickly. Then my mom and dad were sitting in the living room watching TV, when my dad's necklace lifted off his chest and fell back down. My mom saw it and he felt it. Then my sister was sitting in her room drawing, and her papers would float down to the ground without a breeze or anything, just slid off the bed by itself. I forgot to mention that our dogs, who never really barked at anything, would go crazy when we put them to bed in the basement. Finally, we just couldn't live there anymore because we were all too scared. When my mom was in the process of shampooing and vacuuming the place, she left for lunch and came back. And her radio and cleaning supplies were stacked against the door, and the vacuum cords was wrapped around the mantel. There was only 2 ways into the house, the front door and the basement, but the bottom basement door was bolted and locked still, and the rod lock at the basement to the house door was still bolted across. There was nowhere for someone to leave if you stacked stuff at the front door. It freaks me out just typing this.
My cousins and I used to go camping on a huge lake that was surrounded by forest. As we got older and started getting interested in spending time with the young ladies that were around, we'd often head off after dark down to the beaches around the lake to hang out, goof off and flirt, look at the stars, that sort of thing. One night, while we were down at the beach with a group of 4 or 5 of us, we saw a flashlight that looked like it was part of a headlamp coming down the hill from the forest. The light was probably 50 or 60 yards away from us. That in and of itself wasn't odd. What was odd was that that lamp came out of the tree line and continued into the water, never stopping its pace, and just completely disappeared into the lake. Never explained that one, but it was very unsettling.
I was stationed at Fort Sill, Oklahoma. I woke up early and needed cigarettes. I went to the shopette on the other side of the post. I usually drive through a cut through that's easier to get through. I stopped at the light to go through my shortcut. I see then what looks like someone running across the field to a group of trees. I thought to myself that it was a dumb drunk soldier. It popped its head around the tree and looked at me in the car. Craziest thing is whatever it was had glowing red eyes, kinda looked like the taillights in the distance. I shined my brights at it. It ducked behind the tree. I turned my brights off and it popped its head back out and stared at me. It was at that moment I decided to turn and go the long way. Craziest thing was a few years later. My father-in-law was talking about seeing something out in the field while picking up soldiers that had glowing red eyes. Never had a hair on my neck stand up so quickly. When some guys came back from deployment, I immediately picked their brains on if they experienced anything crazy. And this one team I talked to consistently talked about how their team's hut was haunted. They determined that by the age of the building, it was around the time of the Russian invasion. They always heard strange female voices in a different language, and the female on the team's chair would occasionally roll away when she wasn't in the building. The final straw for one guy was when he was Skyping his wife, and they both heard banging in the other room. My friend thought the team was pranking him, so he went to investigate, only to find out that they went for food about 30 minutes prior to the banging, and he was alone in the hut.
I served in Afghanistan, Kunar province, back in 2010 through 2011. This one particular incident happened during one of my platoon's OP guard duty rotations. One night, me and two other soldiers were doing our routine surveillance of a nearby road, just down the hill from our outpost. In our NVG, night vision goggles, we could clearly see a young kid, a shepherd, walking 4 goats up the road. All 3 of us saw it, until I removed my goggles and noticed that the person walking the goats was only visible through our NVGs. The night was pretty clear, and although it was dark, you could still easily see the silhouettes of the goats, but there was nobody else. We could clearly see him with the goats through our goggles, but as soon as we would take the goggles off, he would vanish. Goats were there, but that's it. No person. But with goggles, he was clearly visible. Until this day, none of us who witnessed it could explain what actually it was or what we saw that night, but all 3 of us seen the same thing. I still get the goosebumps just talking about it.
I was driving home from night classes in rural Virginia. It was about 10:30 p.m. and I was on the back road I have driven hundreds of times. I was going around 40 miles per hour when I saw a dog ahead in the road. I slowed down to almost a stop to let it finish crossing the road. The dog stood up on its hind legs and ran like a human into the woods on the other side of the road. I wasn't the only one in the car who saw it. My best friend also saw it as well. The dog looked scraggly, super lanky, and it was a dark color. It's something we'll never forget. I am part of the AAFC, Australian Air Force Cadets. I was a cadet back then, 18-24 months ago. We stumbled across 3 kangaroo carcasses. 2 looked like it was rotting and the other looked fresh with its head clean off. There was a trail of blood leading further into the bush. It was dense. Our sergeant radioed HQ to tell them the discovery, and we get orders to leg it back to base camp. Before we did, the sergeant recorded a video and took pictures of the carcasses. It was about 5 p.m. in the winter. It was getting dark. The staff told us that they will check it out themselves in the morning. That night, we were lucky to sleep near base camp. We didn't use tents, we had tarps set up like A-frames. Around 6 a.m., we woke up only to see the staff and cadet NCOs having a small meeting about whatever happened to the carcasses. Turned out the 3 carcasses disappeared before they get examined. This is why I bring a slightly larger knife whenever I'm on fieldcraft. I am now a qualified NCO, and I tell my flight, squad kind of, this story whenever we go to that specific training base in the brush.
was stationed on the USS Abraham Lincoln aircraft carrier for 5 years. Twice while underway, I was going to the post office at night just to grab an envelope. Both times I felt like somebody jumped out at me as I was just turning into the short passageway leading in, but there was nobody there. I'm not a jumpy person, so it stood out to me. I found out later that some poor guy hung himself in that passageway a couple of years earlier. I still don't believe in ghosts and don't know why one would just try to scare a dude who's just trying to pick up an envelope, but I still haven't forgotten it.
I told this before and it'll stick with me till on my deathbed. Was a high schooler mid-90s, went fishing off the coast of Corpus Christi with uncle and cousins. We were about 18 miles out, been out all day, was around 8 p.m. and were gearing up to head back in. It was before DST, so sun was already going down and getting dark. I was at the stern bringing in the traps. As I'm pulling it in, I see this glow about 100 to 150 feet off. It's nothing I have ever seen. Best way I can describe it, it's like if you stuck a toaster in the water and the orange glowing elements were still working, but still not quite, and it was very large. We were on a 38-foot boat. All I can guess, that was 5 to 6 times bigger. Kinda hard to judge sizes on open water. The water above it is not churning, but you can tell that it is disturbing it. I don't know, hard to explain. Almost like it was pushing up the water. The whole time I'm expecting something to break the surface and was just frozen. You know, like when you're walking your dog or something and at night not really paying attention and a cat or possum runs out. How you freeze and everything stops. I'm like that the whole time. Finally, I let out a call to my uncle. He comes around, stops right by me. He's not saying anything, just kind of like me. This thing, object or whatever the heck, just jets out towards the Gulf. I'm talking like not picking up speed. Instantly jets out. All I say is, you seen that before? My uncle just says, nope, let's go. I say absolutely nothing the way back. He doesn't either. My cousins ask us what happened. All my uncle says is, nothing. Now what could it have been? I've researched it on and off for the past 25 years, especially when the internet came out. I found a lot of people seeing something very similar. There's a naval base down there, but no sub-bases we know about. It kinda took over my life for a lot of years, but we have something like that though. We've been holding out on technology that could change our lives. I know this is old now, but I'd figure I'll share it with you anyways as it kinda correlates. I was on patrol a couple of years back enforcing fishery laws offshore in that same area. We were up and down the coastline and all along the southern border, looking for boats that were fishing red snapper illegally. Anyways, it was the middle of the night and we all get up because another asset we were working with sighted a large fast-moving contact on radar and was giving chase. We picked up the target on radar and launched our small boat to pursue and got underway as well. The target was large enough that you could easily see it and it was definitely a good-sized vessel. In addition to the boats we had out, a shore station launched their LE team and an aircraft. We all pursued this team for at least 30 to 45 minutes, going steadily northbound, and it was just opening distance on us slowly. And then suddenly we just come across a large commercial vessel dead in the target's path. But the object is gone. Nothing on the surface, the fishing boat doesn't see anything, we just don't have any further signs. We all searched for another hour, and then our OP's boss wrote it off as a cloud. A cloud moving over 30 knots, over 20 miles, being tracked by 3 assets and pursued by 4, and there's just nothing. That's always really bothered me that they just wrote it off. I was deployed on a warship in 2016. At this point in time, we were entering the Philippine Sea. Weather has been foul, storms and the like, but it usually stayed far enough away when you can watch the lightning strike the salt water. It lights up everything an ethereal shade of glowing radioactive green. I'm outside watching the storm, and I heard the faint sound of bells, like naval bells, ringing. It sounded a bit muted, like it was underwater. 4 bells like this. Ding ding, ding ding. Then a few minutes later I heard them again. 4 bells are rung for a captain whenever he steps on board ship, and my only thought is there must be some forgotten wreck beneath us, and the dead are still keeping the traditions alive as we sailed over them. The southwestern US has a lot of odd things. I witnessed a large black triangle in the late 80s at night while looking at stars through my telescope. It was completely silent and had a red light at each corner. Looked absolutely massive. My parents didn't really seem to believe me. This was before the black triangle sightings that had hit the popular media, so I'm sure it sounded odd what I was describing. Fast forward to 2011 and a mass sighting of a similar object was recorded on video 15 minutes from where I grew up. This was outside Denver. I'm pretty skeptical. Heck, I make a living off using the scientific method, but there are definitely some odd craft in our skies that may or may not be ours. I never really talked about the sighting much to avoid ridicule, but I know I witnessed a physical craft. I can't take credit for this story because it happened to my younger brother, but it is such a creepy story that he still doesn't like to talk about it. My twin brother and I were in college when my younger brother was a junior in high school, and he was the only brother left on one end of the house. We live out in the country in the middle of nowhere, nothing but farmland wherever you look. Our house was a standard long rectangular house, with our parents' master suite on one end, and our bedroom on the complete opposite end. Between these ends were open concept kitchen, dining, and living room spaces. You could look from one end of the house and see all the way to the other end if both bedrooms on each end were open. My brother, a big guy, 6'4", 250 pounds, was getting home from football practice around 4:30, 5 o'clock p.m., and said he was the only one home at the time. Our mom is a school teacher and our dad farms and works in town as well. Our parents were still working at the time. He came into the house in the back door and was walking through the living room to head to his bedroom. His bedroom was the room at the end of our hallway, completely opposite from our parents' master suite. Maybe if I do a good job describing our end of the house, I can help explain what happens later. Right as you're leaving the living room to enter our hallway and bedrooms, there are 4 doors. The first door on the right was my bedroom, and completely opposite my bedroom is our shared bathroom for us 3 brothers. As you walk down the hallway, the second door to your left is my twin brother's bedroom, and my younger brother's has his room at the end of the hallway. My younger brother's room has a small area you walk in, and then you immediately walk to your right to enter the main part of the bedroom. So if his bedroom door is open, all you see if you are in the hallway is a small entrance facing a wall with light coming in from the open bedroom space on the right. Back to the story. As my brother is walking through the living room and about to enter the hallway, he looks down the hallway to his open bedroom door. He explained that he didn't know why, but he had the deepest pit in his stomach and felt every single hair on his arm stand on end. Something felt wrong to him and he froze as he entered the hallway. Once he got into the hallway and was looking at his bedroom door, he said he saw something beginning to peer around the doorway. He knew exactly what it was, and the only way he could describe it was, it looked like my forehead was peering around the doorframe, getting ready to look right at me. He instantly got the sensation that he didn't need to see what was fixing to show up all the way peering around his door, so he immediately bolted to the left for our bathroom and slammed the door. He said he held his back up against the door and immediately heard someone running down our hallway, past the bathroom into our living room. The worst part was when he could hear him slowly walking back to the bathroom and just stand there. We get absolutely terrible cell reception where we live, so he tried calling our parents but couldn't get a hold of either of them. He stayed in our bathroom with his back up against the door for about an hour until our mom made it home. He says until she got there, he could tell someone was on the other side of that door. When he told us about the story, we just laughed and said maybe it was your doppelganger coming to get you, and he absolutely believes it was something like that. He was so scared during the moment, he said, and he just knew I was not supposed to see what was coming around the door. He's still scared to stay alone at that end of the house, and now he's 27. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed the stories. Thanks for taking the time to listen, and I certainly would be interested in doing more. If you want to hear more of this type of stuff, let me know and I'll be glad to fill you in. See you in part 2.